having God actually on earth with us, walking with us, is the theology and the religion I will follow, because I believe in God walking with us in our pain. And I think actually both you and Peterson, through what you've been through, and you've both been through a lot, that's why you can teach people. Because if if life's perfect, what have you got to teach those people who are so broken? So I think our brokenness is what we have to offer, in fact.
Hello, everyone. I have a podcast coming up with a very good lady that I met in England. And I asked her if she'd come on my podcast. And we're going to have a conversation for about an hour here. I'll just make an introduction for you. The Reverend Helen Orr, born Helen Barrington Ward, was a choral scholar at Magdalen College, Cambridge University in the 1990s, where she studied theology. On leaving college, she became a professional singer under the name Helen J. Hicks in the band The Honey Riders. She was signed to University Music under the Decca record label in 2001, leaving the music industry when she married James Orr. She pursued a calling to the priesthood, which combined her passion for music and theology when they moved to Cambridge. She trained as a priest at Ridley Hall, Cambridge, where she used her music once more to write an album for the spiritually unchurched as part of her master's in pastoral theology. Ordained into the Church of England in 2014, after a curacy in Chesterton, she became the first pioneer minister at Michael House, the oldest surviving chapel in Cambridge. In 2017, and afterwards, the associate priest at the Cambridge University Church, Great St. Mary's. She's now the vicar at Bassingbourn and Whaddon and runs an Airbnb at their home in Cambridge. She continues to write music, poetry, paint, and of course, articles and sermons. Her most recent published work is a chapter in the book on the life of her father, Simon Barrington Ward. It's called Exchange of Gifts. She works along her husband, organizing events for the Trinity Forum, and enjoys hospitality and dog walking and spending time at home with her children, Godfrey and Honor, and of course, moments when she can dwell in her garden. And with that, we'll start the conversation. Hello, Ellen.
Hello, how are you?
Hello. Very good. I'm just going to do a very quick introduction just to say who you are.
Sure.
And then we'll get going. The Honorable Helen Orr. She's a singer-songwriter, priest from Cambridgeshire. And we met not very long ago, but I was very taken with Helen. She was so fun to be with and had very good stories. And so I asked if she would come on my podcast. And we'll talk about Helen and how she came to her belief and whatever else comes up, because it's just really a conversation. So with that, let's get going. So I was I looked on YouTube and I found some of your sermons. I found the one, you told me a story once. It was called about your lost purse. And you did a sermon called God of Surprises.
Yes, that's
right. So I
right.
listened to that this morning and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I joined your church, actually. I really like everything you do. I like the way you talk. You have a very, just a really down-to-earth presence with your congregation. And so I like that a lot, but it's not watered down. It's not watered down religion. It's religion as it needs to be for somebody who wants religion. I mean, that's why I go to church. If I go to church, I want to know God's word. That's what I want to know. And so I think you deliver God's word, and but in a way that people can be comfortable with, in the moment, no matter who they are and what they're going through. Because I imagine you deal with all kinds of people. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do and how you got there?
Oh, okay. Well, I am the vicar of Bassingbourn and Whaddon, which is a little church outside Cambridge. I used to be the associate priest at Great St Mary's, which is the University Church. And before that, I was the pioneer minister at Michael House, which does cafe theology. And I'm all over cafe theology. I think it's wonderful. It's a cafe and a church. And in fact, as the Church of England is becoming more concerned about what they do with their old churches, one of the things they could really do with a lot of them is make them into state-of-the-art, beautiful cafes during the week and wonderful sermons at the weekend. I think that would be wonderful. So that's one of my visions for the future, even for the church that I'm in now. But funnily enough, I don't call myself religious, because I think of myself as spiritual, because I think we all have a spirit. And I think people may be put off by the idea of being religious and that it's all about going to church. And I suppose my idea of theology is sacramental. So everything around me, that means everything is God, everything. I sent you some photos just before this on your WhatsApp, which is our garden. And you'll know, Tammy, having been round our garden, and I'm hoping to open it to the public sometime soon, that I think God is in everything. And I don't mean I'm a pantheist. I just mean that God created everything to glorify him. So when you're walking in the garden and you suddenly get that feeling and you see those beautiful autumnal colors as you do now, and you catch your breath and think, that's God. So that to me is, God can be anywhere. He's not in the building. He's everywhere, because he created everything. And actually, sometimes I think the buildings can intimidate us or make us lose sight of who God is. And that's why I like this idea of hospitality. I think ultimately God is the most hospitable creator, because he's created everything for our enjoyment. And we make all these rules and regulations. And I think Jesus came to say, I have come that you may have abundant life. You know, that you guys want to make it all smaller and smaller and smaller. But I'm making it, and you will do impossible things if you follow me, I guess.
Yeah, well, I've always been spiritual for a very long time, like for my whole life, really. I've only started learning the dogma, the religious, in the last few years to deepen my understanding. And I feel a necessity for it. And I also, we went to Ely Cathedral when we were there. That's Cambridge's University's cathedral. And I could feel the Holy Spirit there. It's a big church. And there was a sermon, and I could feel things that I haven't felt before. And I don't know why, because I went to church with my grandmother, and I used to hope that I would find something there. I found my grandmother. I mean, that was good. And she sung in the choir. And so I'd go home at Christmas and she'd just say, oh, find someone nice to sit with and I'll see you after. She was so sweet. So I don't, I never had a personal relationship with the church, but the times that I spent with my grandmother, and they were just a couple of times, that was great, and I felt the need, the warmth of community, which I think you can find in church, but not necessarily, right?
Yeah, I mean, you should find it in any church. I mean, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this idea I have of doing beautiful coffee cafes in churches, which might sound a bit kind of opposite, is that because I think churches were built for everyone. So, and one of the reasons, what you'd have felt in Ely, which is over 500 years old, I mean, it's an ancient church, it's been at a site for 1,000 years on that site. And people have worshipped there. And that you remember, anyone can feel this. You go into a house and you think, well, this feels warm, this feels cozy. Or equally, you can think, I don't like this feeling. And we all have that, because places have memories, and they're collective memories that stay there. And that's not to be kind of hocus pocus about it. It's just, you can sense it. And if you're being honest, a bit like when Peterson said that thing about the stars. Wow, when you see the stars, when you haven't got all those lights of orange glow, when you're in the country, you go, this is pretty amazing. This is like the best fireworks show ever. There must be something behind this. And it's the same with a church. People have worshipped there for thousands of years. You go, yes. And in fact, it's why the Coptic tradition built their churches on top of old sites of Egyptian gods, because they knew that had been a holy place. And the holiest of holies was for God. And he was God of all the other gods. And that's the God that you and I believe in. And in fact, I think the more you can, I'm not against dogma or religion. In fact, I think the more you learn, I read theology, as you know, here at Cambridge, but the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn, and you become a simple fool, because actually you look back and you think, Jesus just picked some, I think probably Luke was a doctor. You know, he had a few qualified people in there, but mainly they were fishermen. And actually what they were able to do is communicate with those people around them. And I think to myself, what I want to do is communicate with everyone around me. And I imagine what it must be like to be Jesus, where in fact it was so, you know everything, you know more than anyone. It would be so easy to be sort of arrogant and you meet a lot of people like that, closed off, but he was the exact opposite. He was totally on fire for people around him, totally in the moment, totally getting you, being seen and heard. And I think that's my job as a priest, to say, I get you, you're important to God, to me, to the world.
So I've been, as I've been learning my most recent communication with God, I realize I don't know anything. And by having this belief that I have now and realizing that God is with me, it doesn't matter that I don't know anything. So maybe for the first time in my life, it really doesn't matter that I'm completely out of my comfort zone. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing on this podcast. I don't know what I'm doing talking to you. I don't know what I'm doing when I go over to Julian's house and go downstairs with his little baby. I don't know what we're going to do, but it all works out all right if I'm just present, right? So I've learned to be present, and I'm really grateful for that. It's much less worrisome, I can be there and gain what there is in the moment. And that's what we're called to do, I think, isn't it? Yeah. To stay present.
Well, I love that bit in the Bible where Jesus talks about, why worry about tomorrow? It has enough worries of its own. Mm-hmm. Your grace is sufficient for the day, for that day. And I think it's so easy. I'm not saying we shouldn't plan ahead, but it's so easy to get caught up in, what our worries are. And they can be real worries, financial or physical or emotional, or maybe we're going through trauma. And now with lockdown again in this country, people are feeling, but actually just taking a deep breath in and saying, I'm going to hand this to God. Something will happen. I find that so helpful. And that's why I got into the Jesus prayer with my father. And I think that's why in the end I became a priest, because actually when I was a singer, it was quite fun, but people always wanted to know about me rather than me pointing to something bigger than me. And I think God is just so relevant to everybody. And perhaps what I had in my handbag on a radio show or something was relevant to somebody who quite liked lip gloss or whatever it was they're trying to get me to promote. But actually being in the moment, enjoying just being on the phone with you. I don't know what we're going to talk about either, but isn't it great? We're just having this time to be. And I think if I can get people to realize that God loves them, just being, just opening the shutters of their heart to spirit. It's not about trying to be nice to people or even go to church more or even learn more theology. It's actually just about opening those shutters that have closed to yourself and saying, here I am. This is who I am. And that's so freeing, I think.
Well, I spent so much time, if something was going wrong, to fix it, if I felt something was wrong, to look around and see how I could make it better. And, if there is something there, sure, we try to make things better, but now I can sit in a place of real discomfort. I've just been starting to be able to sit in discomfort with someone who's suffering. And that's got to be in scripture somewhere, where you can sit with someone, they're suffering, and all you give them is love and kindness. And they find out how to solve their problems, that we don't have to do anything. This was amazing to me to experience, but it did work out that way.
Well, Ecclesiastes says, weep with those who weep, mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice. And that is that sitting in the moment, sitting where you are kind of thing. I think it's, it's so special to be able to just be with you today and be in this moment. And I think I have a lot of people who are in crisis and I can't fix their, one person in my church has gone back. She's missed both funerals of her parents because they were during COVID, and she's got a sick sister, and it's the anniversary of her husband's death, and none of these all happened, and I was just able to say, that's really awful. Let's just be in that sad place together. And that somehow helps, I think.
I know. Isn't that something?
Mm.
I think that's something. After all these years of trying to fix everything and find out I didn't have to do that.
Maybe that's what feminine theology is all about. Because I think
I think it is
more, yeah.
To be present, right? To be present and welcoming when your children, when your neighbors, when just to be there, to be present enough to notice what's going on. Because, if you get your mind going and then you have a plan, often you can't see exactly what's going on. And I'm sure I've missed a lot. Even in my relationship with my husband, all those years of trying to be the one who was making things better. I think that I was impeding his progress in his own understanding of himself. And I think I've probably done that with my children too. And now that I'm trying to stay more present, I can see them too. I can see what they learn. It makes me love them. It gives me a chance to celebrate in their achievements. Yeah. And that's, it's new and it's good. And I wouldn't go back.
Well, that's great, Tammy. I love that, because I was thinking to myself, actually, we can become so judgmental of our children because we accidentally, I think I said in my sermon last week, which on my other thing was, my father's mother used to always be slightly critical. And then one day Dad said, why are you being so critical? And she said, I just want you to be perfect. And the thing is that we do these things and we think that they know that we love them, but actually they just feel judged all the time. And I can remember I had on my fridge this poem about this woman who said, I pick more daisies, it's called. I can't quote the poem, but it's all about how she wouldn't worry about her hair and all these other things. If I could live my life again, I'd pick more daisies. And I thought, what a great idea that is, that you just are a bit freer. You stop worrying about everything. You live in that moment. So if you, yeah, I like that a lot. Let's see. I had some questions here that I wrote down. Ooh, you did a night prayer on YouTube too. I did.
And you didn't do it on YouTube. You did it in the church, but it was filmed.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. There were so many prayers in the night prayer that I knew.
Yeah.
So it was definitely accessible to me. And so I think that would be something that you would take pieces of, I guess, and use within your family. Is that what it was for?
Well, funnily enough, Compline is, as a priest, you're meant to say morning and night prayer on a regular basis. I mean, I once had a young ordinand say, I didn't do night prayer. I said, you don't beat yourself up about it. I said, it's fine. You don't have to do it. The idea is it's to encourage your faith and nurture you. And as a priest, in an ideal world, you do morning and night prayer every night, but you don't always manage it. And you mustn't feel, it's not another rule to hit yourself with. But it reminds you, what's so nice is I go to see my mother. In fact, after this, I'm going to go to her care home. And even when it was lockdown, I would sit outside her window. She was luckily by the car park, and have the window just ajar. And I would read night prayer, and I could see her murmuring it because she's done it all her life because my dad was a priest. And I thought that is my gift, actually, that I can go and see her and we do night prayer together. And you can get an app with them on. And of course, the Catholic and the Anglican ones are quite similar. So you'd be quite familiar if you're a Catholic with the night prayers that we do, because they're kind of bog standard for across the board. But
maybe we could share those apps with the viewers just at the end.
Yeah.
So apps for morning and night prayer, right?
Yeah. You can go on to, we've got one. And also the other thing I really love to do, which is a Pray As You Go, which is an app which has a sort of Ignatius feel to it. So I'm just looking it up.
Pray As You Go?
Yeah, Pray As You Go. And they do a thought for the day which is a sort of prayer, a bit of gospel. It will be a lectionary for that. The lectionary is every day. And they will then take that bit and make you really think about it. And they also have a musician, a bit of music, so you can have a moment and then you imagine yourself in that place. And, maybe it's walking the water. And do you get on the water? Are you like Peter, or do you stay in the boats like the other disciples? And you have a think about it. And it's a very nice way of starting or ending your day. I also do that. And it's about 10 minutes. So I
like that. And 10 minutes is a good length, I find. 10 or 15 minutes is something that people can do at any time of day, when they're walking or when they're sitting down for the evening. And 10 minutes is, because sometimes these podcasts are 3 hours long.
Wow.
I have a really hard time having the time to do 3 hours. I think if you were a truck driver or something, it'd be really good. Because then you'd have the time. Oh, I have an echo. Do you have an echo?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Oh, I think it's gone. An echo for a minute. I don't know where that came from.
No. Well, okay. No, I do think, and the other thing, so Complin's normally about 20 minutes or something, and you can do it on, I was just looking up the daily prayer app, Common Worship, it's called Daily Prayer. That I haven't on my thing, it's just the name of it's Daily Prayer. Daily Prayer. That's what the app's called. And that one again has morning prayer, and you can log on to the midday prayer and evening prayer. You can do prayer 3 times a day in some churches. I mean, people love to do that. I love to do that. Yeah, do you? That's great. I don't always do that every time. I don't either, but I love it. Yeah. No, it's a kind of monastic lifestyle. So if you're in a monastery, you'd get up and you'd do morning prayer, and then you'd have your midday, and then you'd have your evening, and then you'd have your compline, which is your night prayer. So you have one 4 times a day, really. That's how it works if you're in a monastic setting, which is quite a nice rhythm to your day, just prayerful. So I love this. I've been trying to read at night as I get to bed, and so but I haven't really had prayers that I knew to put into that context, so now I can find them. So that's really good. That'll be really helpful to me. Morning prayer, I've been praying the rosary, but I wouldn't mind, because some days I don't have time to pray the rosary. Sometimes people just arrive at my door, and that's that. The day has begun. Yes. And so then I need a prayer that I can do just on the spur of the moment. And so I suppose I can find those there too. Are there any that you really like for the morning? Yeah, I mean, every morning is your love. I love saying that. The steadfast love of the Lord never faileth. His mercies never come to the end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, O Lord. And it's just nice to have that in your mind, thinking that is what God is. He's faithful. Every morning is new. I used to love, there's a song like that. In fact, if you wanted to look on something else that I've done, on Facebook, I started this thing called Michael House Worship. During lockdown, I was just playing on the piano in this room. That's my little piano over there. Oh. And I would, that was sometimes slightly out of tune. But I stopped it when my father was in hospital and dying. So the last one was that. So that I must start it again because it was a bit gloomy. But I just suddenly felt, it was Facebook Live, and it was really easy to do. And I would just sing any tunes that came into my head. But I made up this one about the Jesus prayer. Just because I felt it was so nice to have something you could just sing about mercy. And I think people often forget mercy means God's loving kindness. It's loving kindness coming down. And so when you say, have mercy on me, a sinner, you're saying, even though I'm sinful, your loving kindness makes me clean. It's not actually the gloomy prayer people think it is. It's actually the opposite, because you always end with Lord Jesus Christ. So an acknowledgement that God is God, that we are obviously sinful compared to him, but that despite that, his mercy is new every morning, and his love for us, whatever we've done, however we've behaved, whether we've been perfect or non-perfect. I'd love to say that I'm very all over being non-perfect quite often. So the prayer itself, though, is Jesus, have mercy on us, I'm a sinner, or something like that? So that's right. So the prayer is based on 2 ancient prayers of the desert fathers and mothers, in Egypt. They would go off into their hermitage and they would pray together. And in fact, the Greek Orthodox still do it as a community prayer, but you can do it alone, but it's quite often done in communities. And it's, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And you say it again and again, in a bit like the rosary. You can have prayer beads, and when you get to the seventh bead, you pause and you think of all the people you want to offer to Christ to enfold in his mercy. And when you get to the end, there's a tassel at the end, and that you always end with Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, because you're acknowledging that that's your end point, not the sinfulness, but the love of God for one pouring into your heart and soul.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's a prayer you can do by breath, Tammy. So you go, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Lord Jesus Christ, Son, and it's cyclical. And in fact, I did that. There is a recording somewhere on YouTube if you want it. Simon Barrington Ward, we'll look it up. Praying the Jesus prayer together. I interviewed my father before he died and before he wasn't so well, because he prayed it all his life, and he became like this glowing presence. I think I send you a WhatsApp. There's a book coming out about him. And,
yes, you did.
And the Archbishop wrote a foreword saying, because my dad ordained him, just saying he has a kind of glow. And he did, he had this amazing glow. And I thought, maybe when I'm your age, I will. I remember he always met loads of lovely people, and he never name dropped, but he went to meet Mother Teresa when he was in Calcutta, because he ran this thing called the Church Missionary Society. And he said he walked into this room, and he was waiting for the great lady to arrive, and a woman with a bucket was sort of fiddling around and sort of moving things about. And then she stood up and looked at him, and he realized that was her, because her eyes were just so full of God's love and grace. He said, I would love to have eyes when I'm older that shine like that. And the beauty was he didn't realize that, but he had that spirit. And that's why I'm a priest.
And that's why you're a priest.
Yeah,
because you were a jazz singer.
I was
a jazz singer.
Yeah, yeah. I think.
So at what time of your life did you change? Did you go to theology school?
Well, funnily enough, I read theology in this country. Before we didn't used to have to pay to go to university. In fact, I got a scholarship to go to university, and so you kind of did something you were kind of interested in. So I had a choral scholarship to sing, which you get the choir scholarship at these colleges. I was a soprano choral scholar. And so I had to sing twice a week in chapel. And then I thought, I won't read music because that will put me off it. I will do something more fun. So I decided to do theology, because my dad was a theologian, loved Hegel, had a stack of books, was a bishop. We had a theological library, lived in this huge house with all these theology books and people coming and going. And I thought, kind of easy. I was probably a bit lazy, thinking I can do this. This is, my dad's been chatting with me about the Hegelian philosophy since I was 16, so I felt I had a head start on many of the other people probably. And I was interested in it. I always wanted to look into the problem of evil, and I also wanted to look at other faiths. I felt I'd been brought up a Christian, and what would it be like to be a Hindu or a Buddhist? So I did Hinduism, Buddhism as one of my courses, and I did Holocaust theology and Judaism as another. They didn't have anything much on Islam at the time, which is a shame. So I'm a bit more ignorant on that. But I enjoyed just looking at philosophy, looking at maybe I could be an atheist. And I came back always to the principle. In fact, you can probably just see it behind me there. There's a little cross on the wall. It's very dark. It's actually an African version of Jesus being crucified, which I loved as a child. I could send you a photo of that. It made me feel there was no adequate reason that God would have made us and then not known about our suffering. And Christ was really suffering for us and with us and walks with us. And his wounds are still there as a risen Christ. And I thought, my father, who could have really got freaked out when I came back, going, I think I'm going to be a Buddhist, Dad. It's kind of more alternative, and everybody, welcome everyone in. And he said, yes, but what about the theology of suffering? Because it's kind of not just, kind of thinking of a higher power and it'll go away. Actually, there's something more about God suffering with us. And when I really thought about it, I thought, he's got a point, actually. And I've always come back to the fact that whilst all these other ways may be pathways towards God, having God actually on earth with us, walking with us, is the theology and the religion I will follow, because I believe in God walking with us in our pain And I think actually both you and Peterson, through what you've been through, and you've both been through a lot, that's why you can teach people. Because if if life's perfect, what have you got to teach those people who are so broken? So I think our brokenness is what we have to offer, in fact.
Absolutely, I agree. What did you learn about evil? You said you were looking interested in evil.
Well, do you know, when I was a kid, I loved those sort of a teenager, I started reading those sort of self-help books by Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled, and, they all sold millions of copies. And he wrote a really interesting book called People of a Lie. And he said, evil isn't really people being terrible to each other. If you've been in an abusive relationship, you'll probably abuse someone. If you've been exposed to drugs and all that kind of thing, or had social deprivation, you'll probably end up being rather socially deprived, and depraved in other ways. He said it actually tends to be people who say black is white and white is black. And he gave the illustration of a couple, I never forgot this, who came to see him and who said they really were worried about their son and could he help? And he gave them advice and they did the exact opposite. And he said they were very respectable, but he said they were actually quite evil. They were actually destroying this child, and then actually saying to everyone, we've been to see everyone. He said they knew that the woman was a headmistress of a school, the husband was, but there was something really dark about them. And he said, actually, the devil, of course, believes in Jesus. I always say to people, believing in Jesus doesn't mean anything. It's how do you use your faith in human? Do you use it to twist things, or do you use it in a truth-seeking way? And people who are truly evil are basically saying hate is love and love is hate. And, satanic, I met a person who'd been a Satanist, and they do exactly that. They turn the crosses upside down. They do everything upside down. So there's something in us that is profoundly linked to truth. And when you lose sight of that, and when you choose the dark, it's like the Star Wars choosing the dark side, but there is that. That's why those films speak to people, because they know that we have a choice, even if you don't just decide to call it God, to follow the light and the truth, or to follow the dark and go down a negative path.
Yes. I didn't know they turned the crosses upside down. And yeah, I really don't know that much about evil. I probably haven't spent that much time. I mean, I live with somebody who's investigated it thoroughly, so I know more than I would have about it. But that wasn't my inclination to look at those things. It definitely wasn't. I was kind of attracted to people who were suffering. The people on the street who were suffering, I was attracted to them. I think I felt some familiarity with them. I mean, because we're all suffering, right? So I found myself attracted to them. Now and then I brought home somebody who was suffering. Jordan was like, "Oh, Tam, what are you doing?"
Cat kind of syndrome.
Yeah, what are you doing?
But actually, Tammy, something I think is really important that you've just said is not actually giving the press to the bad things. Because actually you can become one of the things that I got told was actually giving, like if I have bad things happen to me, and I've had bad things happen to me, I don't big them up. I ignore them. Because actually what you're supposed to do is not wallow in evil. You're meant to say, Christ says, in this world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer, or be of great faith, for I have overcome, or I have conquered the world. So the world in some ways is the devil's playground in theology, but God has overcome it. And it isn't that we aren't in the darkness. And I love that my sermons for this Christmas are about light shining in the darkness. You need darkness for the light to shine. Mm-hmm. If you think about it. And it's not that we get rid of the darkness, it's rather that we overcome it with the light. And I think that's really helpful, that because I think when I was younger, people got very obsessed by the occult and, Ouija boards, and there was all that kind of poltergeisty thing. And actually that's giving too much power to the dark side. You need to you've got the right instinct to just ignore it. Because I'm not saying we shouldn't be informed, but you can be too well informed. And actually, when you train to be a priest, they do make you talk about exorcisms, because you do sometimes have to go to places where people have clearly got a ghost or something that needs to be removed. And we have an exorcist. Every church diocese will have a professional person in there, and we have a number to call. It's like, who are you going to call? There is actually somebody. But what he said that was so interesting, he came to speak to us, was he said, sometimes it isn't that. It's just the place is a bit disturbed and people are very chaotic, and that energy may be being picked up in the room, and it's not necessarily a poltergeist or something at all. But he said occasionally it is. It's very rare. But he said that actually you want to avoid talking about those cases or giving them any credence, because actually the devil wants us to feel overcome and overwhelmed, and actually good has triumphed, and ultimately we can drive out demons because God is in charge. And resurrection, if we didn't believe in the resurrection, we'd have a problem, but we do believe in the resurrection. And I think that's the key to everything. Yes, death. Remember that bit of John Donne, death be not proud, because death thou shalt die. And that's the thing.
So I have a little story. So quite a few years ago, we were out for the evening with a friend or two. I can't quite remember. And there was a woman in the downtown place we were who was selling mushrooms. And so we bought a few magic mushrooms and we went out, we ate them and we went out for a walk in the city. And it was really cool. You know, you can, it was wet out. And so all of the reflections would shine more and stuff. It was quite fun. But then we went down the side street, and across the street, there was a house, and it was fenced off. And this man was walking down the street on the other side of the street. And when he got in front of the house, he started to curse. And he was cursing. And then as soon as he was by the house, he stopped.
Woo,
eh? So you're saying, you know, that some houses have, different houses have different spirits. And when we bought this house, I didn't want to buy it. There was something here. And shortly after we bought the house and fixed the house and moved in, Michaela was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis.
wow.
You know, she was already showing symptoms, I would say, before we moved in the house. It wasn't like the house caused her disease, but that's when things got serious, that we had to really pay attention. And we've renovated this house 3 times. And now it feels good. Now it feels good. We have icons here and there around the house, and both of us are pursuing a spiritual life. And so I think that we have, God willing, we've cleared this house of any, but I do believe that the place we lived in, Boston, we looked at many, many houses before we bought a house, but the one we bought, it just had, I felt like it was light, you know, there's lots of sunlight coming in, but it wasn't just that. I thought the family who lived here, they were happy or something, you know, they got along, something. This is a good house. And we lived there and we had a great time there. So I do believe that that's true, that you can find these places that are haunted and then ones that are blessed, and to go towards the blessing.
And actually, you can always change the dynamic in a house. You can get somebody to come and bless it. I've always got I've always got my local priest to come and bless my house. I'll do it. If you want them to.
I'm going to do that. Do that.
It's really fun to do, and go around every room blessing them. And I've had it. I mean, you've been here. I love feeling that people are welcome, you know, at any point to come and just be and hang out. And we have enough space for people to just mill around in the garden. I don't even have to see them, you know, just the idea that it's good energy. And so I was very keen. So yeah, I got my dad to bless this place, and my local priest to bless it. I just think you can never have too many blessings, right?
No, that's right. I want to talk about your garden now. Let's talk about your garden.
Sure. Okay.
So I came there. You gave us a place to stay, and it was in the garden. It was in a little house in the garden, and we felt so at home there, and such warmth, and it was just the perfect place to be. It was adjoined, so we could always go up to the house and say hello to you, but we had our privacy, and we were near the river. It was a really good experience. We hope we can come back there. But I'd like to know about how long you've been there and what it was like to decide that you wanted this place. What brought you there?
Yeah, well, basically, I it was my parents. So like I said, I think our parents are such influences on us, aren't they, for good or for bad or for whatever. And my family, I've been blessed by two saintly parents, and I wanted to look after them because they were getting to that age where they were getting frail. And I started getting really desperate about the idea that I'd already moved once to be near them, and I was taking meals across the road every day in the street. And I just thought, oh my goodness, there's got to be some way of doing this. So I was sort of like, where can we find? And I just finished doing up this house. And then I was thinking, they're too old, they're too frail. This isn't going to work. I need to be closer. I can't just walk across the street every day to get to them. I actually want them right on site. And my friend next door, I'd become friends with, said, do you know, Helen, I think you need to look at this house. And I said, oh, I can't be bothered to move. I've literally just put the paintbrush down last week. You know, we did underpinning. I mean, the whole thing took ages. And she said, no, I really do. And it's in Chesterton. Now, I showed you the church here in St Andrews. I was on my curacy here. So I thought, well, it's round the corner from where I've been for 4 years, and I've never even heard of that street. And that made me happy, because I was like, when you're a public person, as you are, and in my small way, I suppose I am, you know, being a vicar, people know who you are and say hello. Being able to hide away is quite important for regenerating who you are. I mean, I'm pretty extrovert, as you know, but even extroverts, I think, need some space to just be able to give back, you know. And certainly my husband's more introverted than me. Definitely, I felt for us as a family, this was going to be a good spot to just be able to hide away some of the time, so we could be a family and regroup, but also people who wanted to hide away as well. You know, it was lovely having you here and feeling that you weren't going to be kind of spied upon, but, you know, we're just in a nice, quiet, secluded spot. So I've always seen this as a retreat, and particularly for my father, who loved dogs, who loved people, who was always wandering around. I thought, this is important. This is important. He has a space for his dog, for walking in the garden. So I walked into the garden, and I still remember thinking, this cannot come with this house. The house is quite little, quite ordinary looking, not a big castle. And then there's this 1.5 acres of private land with your own moorings on the river. We own a bit of the moorings of the Cam, you know, right by the centre of Cambridge. It's one of the largest private gardens left. And on either side of us, which is why ours is the best house, I think, are private gardens. And there's 3 in a row, and they're overlooked on the right by somebody, and the left is overlooked by a pub, and we're right in the middle, overlooked by nobody. So it feels like you're in the country, and yet it's 10 minutes on a bike into town, or, you know, 5 in a car. So it's just the best feeling, or 20 walking along the river, you know. So I think I felt really, oh my goodness, it was too expensive, really. And I felt we had to sell everything we owned. And I gave you that poem, didn't I, that I wrote. I just felt so inspired. I sat by the river and went, Lord, if this is for us, you know, it's gonna take a miracle for us to buy this place. We'll be overstretched and but, you know. And I was, you know, we managed to sell 5 properties in the space of 3 months in a market that was so sluggish. My lawyer, who was doing that for me, took a week off straight after. She's totally like, but, you know, we did it. We did something that I didn't think was possible. And my parents were here for the first year. And then they sadly faded away. Dad died during COVID and was getting a bit mad and had to go into the care home earlier. My mother then joined him because she broke her hip, and she's still there because she needs 2 carers. But it is only round the corner. But I then thought, well, what do you want me to do with this place, Lord? And I really felt this is going to be a place of prayer. It's going to be a retreat. That's what I prayed when I first got it. And I'm in the process of just making myself a little prayer hut in the garden, not making it official like a chapel or anything, because I'd need planning for that, but just having a little place where I can go and pray, which is after all my job, I suppose, and where others can join me. And I want to have an icon. We talked about icons, didn't we? I want an icon there and little lights. And I want to put along a wall the Stations of the Cross. I would love that, but they have to be waterproof so they can be outside. And I want children from the local school and the local church to be able to come into the garden and enjoy the wonder and find God in the garden. That's my wish.
Well, I think you could, after listening to one of your sermons, I can't remember which it was, but it was so down to earth. You know, it had prayer and everything, but I could see that you were speaking to children, and it was good. So I think that sounds like a perfect plan. And the icon idea, we've already talked about the icon idea. that Jonathan Pajot carves icons. I'd really like you to have one of his icons to put there.
Well, that would be
they're so beautiful.
Mm.
It'll really be special.
Oh, that would be amazing. And then you'd have to come and we'd have a little blessing and you could come and join in. This could be your retreat.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun. I can't see why not.
No. Well, I mean, my other idea was that at Christmas and at Easter, we'd do like mystery plays where people would come by river, so it wouldn't annoy the neighbours. We wouldn't have everybody piling into it, but we'd get the local school to come on a boat from up the river and come out, and we'd have mulled wine at Christmas for the parents, and we'd do a lovely tableau, in the garden. I get some actor friends to do.
Nice.
And I thought that would be fun. And then at Easter, we'd do a sort of passion play, because I was always interested in acting and did a lot of acting when I was younger, and I was always fascinated by the fact the first plays were theology. The passion plays were the original play. All the medieval cathedrals like you went to in Ely, they would have had a play on,
Right.
And all these pews everybody puts in the middle and gets worried about moving the pews. The pews were only brought in by the Victorians. In the old days, you just have pews in the side for posh families, and the centre was all for the hoi polloi local, not the hoi polloi, the local people. And you'd have your pigs in there, you'd be trading, it was because, and then the Victorians came along and built lots of village halls and things because they didn't want their church, they wanted their church to become a school. But I think actually churches should be life. They are life-giving.
Yes.
They shouldn't be schools. And there are a few churches where they have old pews, and maybe they were like that, but most of them would have a big space in the middle, so you could have Christmas markets, and we still have Christmas market in ours. We just sort of balance it on the pews, but but anyway. But I want to rethink how
that
we.
Sounds good.
Spaces. Yeah.
Yeah. When Jordan and I when he was in graduate school, we lived in Montreal, in a neighborhood in Montreal, and there was a big Catholic. There was a Catholic. I'm not sure if it was Catholic. It was a church, but it was in Montreal and it's French, and so most of the churches were Catholic. Mm. But I don't know, it was one night a week they had bingo in the basement.
Brilliant.
And you'd walk by the church and it smelled like smoke, and it just used to make me laugh because it seemed kind of sacrilegious that they were bedding in the basement and smoking up a storm. It just was
hilarious.
It was hilarious. Yeah, one day I was walking by that church and a young man and his girlfriend got in his car. And it wasn't an expensive car, it was just a car. And we were walking on the other side of the street. And then he got in, started the car, and put his arm back like he was going to back up, but he put it in drive and went forward and smashed into something. He was so surprised. Oh, those are my two memories of the church.
Okay, well, there you go. No, well, I have my memories of, I suppose, well, actually, I remember Alcoholics Anonymous, of course, which loads of people are part of AA, was started by two Christian guys, I think, in the basement of the church. And they would all come and smoke their cigarettes and, drink lots of coffee, trying to give up alcohol, while giving themselves something else to die from, But anyway, that is actually how they started it. So I think, out of these places, you can get interesting things.
Yeah, actually, that was the Oxford group, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on a second. Get out. Sorry, my dogs are really annoying me, but I just decided it was warmer here, being in here. And also, I suppose I love dogs because they are so happy to see you at all times.
All the time. Yes, that's for sure. I know. I went over to see my little grandson, and Rudy, the dog, he had to be said hello to. He has to sit though first because he's pretty pushy. And then if you don't pet him enough, he whines away trying to get more attention. But anyway, he just loves attention. He just wants to be. Dogs are really something.
No, they are. They are, and we were going back to where we started, if you like. We living in the present moment. Dogs show you that. Animals. I'm suspicious of people who don't like animals because it's like, well, they're actually teaching us the lesson of living in the present moment. From I want something to eat. Shall we go for a walk? Hello, the whole thing is like, this is how I am. And actually, I think they have a lot to teach us about just being totally unjudgmental. When I come in, James may have a million questions. Godfrey will want something to eat. Honor will want something else. And the dog will just go, hi, hello, it's me, hi. And then James says, why do you like them so much? I'm like, because they don't ask me of anything except a bit of love, and So, yeah.
My little dog, when we got a dog, Michaela was 10. She finally talked us into having a dog. And I took care of the dog. He was my dog. But I remember walking with him, and I walked down the street and he stopped to sniff, and I realized, oh, you know what? There's a tree here. I've never noticed this tree. I've never noticed this little piece of grass. Here I am walking in quite a bit of asphalt, and here's this place that I could stop and look up and see a tree. And my dog showed me that. And that was the first bit. I was like, oh yeah, I'm very grateful to have you, because you're going to keep me in the present. You're going to focus me on nature. And I've always, if I've ever had a sad time, and I have, years and years ago, I was feeling, full of self-pity. I can't remember what was going on. And I went and sat in a park to eat lunch by myself, and squirrels came up. They wanted to eat with me. And I thought, you know what? I may be alone, but the squirrels are still going to come. So it doesn't matter, really. And that was good. And so there's God again in nature, just surrounding us with what we need in the moment. Yeah. So I've always been a very spiritual person, like always. So my religion here that's coming out now is there's a foundation for it. I'm quite sure. I'm not surprised.
Well, can I ask you a question? Tell me about, when you say my religion coming out, tell me a bit about what exactly you mean by that.
What does that mean? Oh, well, I never used to spend every moment of the day with God, and I still don't, but I never strive. That wasn't what I was planning. Now that's what I'm planning. When I get up in the morning, it's like, okay, God, my eyes are open again. Let's see what the day is going to bring. And hopefully I will be, George calling me. I can't answer, George. That wasn't God. That was Jordan.
Some people think he is God. Well, yeah, that's right. No,
but I didn't answer him, whereas I would answer God if he came.
Of course.
Well, he does come.
Yeah.
And I tried to pay attention all day. And if I err and make a mistake, I try to accept that was the lesson he had for me that day. And thank you very much. And I'll try to do better next time. But I really I was never like that. So it's just so constant now. I call that my religion, that I want to be present and aware as much as I can. I want to say all the time, but that's perfection, and that's not going to happen. But as much as I can, and I know that I'll see miracles if I do. And I don't have to be the one in control to see them. In fact, it's better that way.
Well, that's amazing, because there's a wonderful book. I think it's a medieval book, and it's about a simple guy who just talks about praying unceasing, and he goes on this journey of trying to see how he can pray unceasingly, because he says, how come St. Paul says we can pray unceasingly? How does a day and night pray? And he gets really kind of into it. I've forgotten the name of the book. I'll have to ping it to you later. But it's a very interesting book, and it's about 600-700 years old, and it's an old book. And I just got it really, Imitations of Christ, I think it's called. Anyway, it's a great, and it's anonymous. We don't know who this guy is, this simple guy. But a bit like Brother Lawrence, who used to always love to wash up and pray while he was washing up. He was a monk he spent his whole life just being in a daily routine. And that was another little book that I read when I was younger, of just his life, of how everything is a prayer. If you want,
I'd like to read all those books.
Well, I'll send you some links afterwards. But they are they're several hundred years old. And one of the reasons somebody says to me, "Why do you do lectionary readings? Why don't you just decide what you're going to read?" And I said, well, because people much wiser and cleverer than myself over many generations came up with a routine where we could do the whole Bible in a couple of years or a year. And people now say, oh, you can do the Bible in the year. There's, Nicky Gumbel's version or whoever's version. And I'm like, yeah, they're all very nice. And I like to hear David Suchet reading. But actually, we do the Bible in the year. It's called the lectionary. We've been doing it for several hundred years. And much cleverer people than us came up with that idea. I like the challenges, because I think if you only talk about things that you want to talk about in terms of Bible, you can just focus on the loving Jesus phrases and forget about the baby's heads being dashed against the stream verses. But actually, when you do the lectionary, you have to cover everything. You have to look at the hard things as well as, and life isn't just the nice, gooey, doesn't Jesus love me? And it's also the bits where you feel a bit bashed and bruised. And I think it's quite good to have those readings that you then have to talk about and unpick and exegetically work out, what is this saying for my life? So that's why I have the discipline of the lectionary. And, sometimes I might do a series on prayer or something, but I never deviate too far from this is what we're doing. Because at Christmas Mass, I'm going to talk about that 1 John reading about the light comes out. The light is in, and the darkness cannot overcome it. Christ becoming the word that is breathed out on it. That's such a powerful, we all do it at Christmas. But it's a memory, it's a living memory for people to have this wonderful reminder that, again, of that light not being overcome, and of actually allowing that light in, like I said before, allowing yourself to shine. Marion, whatever her name is, once said, who are you not to shine? I think that's true. Who are we not to be, Tammy, shining with all the glory of God?
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here and talking to you, because who am I to deny myself the world of my light, right? And I have spent most of my life denying that that part of me that was yearning to be, but unknown, because it's a little scary to decide that I'm going to let things happen in a organic way and I'm not going to have control of them. That's foreign to me. And so, but it's exciting now. Oh, I get to do something. I don't know what's going to be. I don't know what we're going to talk about. I don't know how it's going to go. And that doesn't matter, because that's not the important part. The important part is that I'm there. That's all that's important. Man, that makes it easy. Makes it easy, because now I can just be here. And I'm not an intellectual. I'm not somebody who has lofty things to say. And that's okay. That's okay. That's who I am. God decided that that's who I'd be. Then that's who I am. And accepting that is that's what I'm about now, accepting that and trying to move forward to it. And then having someone graciously accept to speak with me makes it happen. And that's so cool too. I'm going to keep doing this. This is fun.
No, well, you're very good at it. I mean, I have to say, Letting the Light In was the title of the first album I wrote when I decided to write an album. And I didn't write an album for years because I was worried people would reject it and wouldn't like it. And then
is this the music?
Yeah.
So because you gave me 2, but neither of them are Letting the Light In.
Well, actually, one of them is it got redone when I got signed to Decca Records. I didn't give you the non-professional kind of version that I had at home, but when I signed with them, I'd already done an album, and then they remarketed it. It's the one where I look like I'm sort of, just an eyes, a nose, and a face. But well, next time you come, I'll give you the raw copy. I'll send you a copy of the raw copy. But Letting the Light In was the first album I just suddenly got back from having been in Africa and my whole life stripped away, and my first relationship in tatters. And I said to you, we learn from our suffering. And I suddenly thought, it can't be more embarrassing than a failed relationship that everybody I know seems to know about, because we're like the hello of the Church of England. And I thought, well, do you know what? I'm just going to do this album. I've been talking about actually recording for years. And I just set up my own record label, called it Loudmouth Music, put out an album. And then that's how I got signed to Decca Records. I was 29. It took me that long to go, oh, okay, I'm just going to do this now, or I'm always going to be talking about doing it. And yes. I've worked with lots of other people, Larry Norman and his brother. I'd worked with them in LA. I'd met loads of famous people, but I never quite got myself into doing it for myself, because it's so vulnerable and exposed, Tammy, to be in that space of like, what if they all hate me?
Yeah, right.
And actually, that's what Jordan's done. He's just, and you've done. You just go out there and think, well, maybe they'll hate me, or maybe this will be helpful to somebody. And who am I not to put it out there and see who's going to find it helpful? So
and maybe if almost everybody hates me, but one person finds it helpful, then it was worth doing. Because if one person came to your door and you were helpful to them, you'd think that was great. Just because everybody else doesn't listen doesn't mean it's not worth doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do.
I have to go.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
I have to go. We have to finish. I have a doctor's appointment.
Oh, well, it's been so lovely to see you.
It's been so lovely. Thank you very much.
And you do shine.
Thank you very much. I have to take this call.
Okay, take care. God bless. Bye.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Just stop and feel. It's not a black and gray, but color.